Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Brian Lin, and welcome to the Piano Star Masterclass, a 30-minute interview with a guest teacher, followed by an hour of masterclass performed by two students. During the live stream, you can ask us any question in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. You can also sign up to be a performer for these masterclasses and get a chance to perform for a live audience. Today's guest teacher, Dr. Scott McBride Smith, is a visionary leader in music education. He's the Cordelia Brown Murphy Professor of Piano Pedagogy at the University of Kansas, immediate past president and chair of Global Initiative of the Music Teacher National Association in the United States, and professor at China Conservatory in Beijing. For more information, you can visit his website at scottmcbridesmith.com. So now, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Scott McBride Smith. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian. Thanks for that great introduction.
Thank you. All right. So our topic today, since we only have 30 minutes, we usually just jump right into the topic, is about repertoire selection. So my first question to you would be, why do you think a good repertoire selection is important for teachers and students?
Well, there's a lot of research on this in the last, I'd say 20 or 30 years, but I would say most of us teachers don't really need the research because we know already people practice things more if they like it.
I see.
So that's why. And by the way, the research supports that.
Right. So on the contrary, then, do you think if you have a poor repertoire selection, it will affect students' choices to continue or stop piano lessons?
Much of the research that I know is US based, and I'd be interested to find out if what the research says is true in other countries, but I can certainly tell you what's true here. And we see that most students stop study somewhere in the middle school years. So that would be in the United States, anywhere from 6th grade to 9th grade, maybe. And there's studies about that. Why did you quit music? Now, interestingly enough, they don't say they quit music because they don't like it anymore. They still like it, but don't have enough time to practice, too much homework, competing activities, and don't like the pieces, or the pieces are too long for the amount of practice time they have. So yeah, it's definitely a factor.
I see. So speaking of pieces that are too long, how do you think one can balance, the difficulty of a repertoire versus, giving enough challenge of it to students? How do you know when something is too hard or too easy for the students?
Well, tough question. Do you have 3 days? I can probably tell you all about it by the end of 3 days, or at least give you an overview and start.
Right. Overview is fine.
I remember years ago when I was starting teaching, in those days we didn't have pedagogy classes or anything, and I asked a very distinguished older teacher, how did she know how to challenge her students? And she said, I look into their eyes. And so, first of all, the real answer is you kind of have to know your student and know what's interesting to them and what motivates them. So that's number one. Every student, every family is a little bit different. So you can't make a rule. But in general, the research tells us that people respond to things that are a little bit above their current level. So if things are too easy, it's not motivating because it's not fun and there's no reason to practice. You can already do it. If it's too hard, you get discouraged and there's no point in trying. And this is what the research says about middle school students. They don't have enough time to practice, so they kind of just give up. So the trick is getting something that's in their interest level and that's a little bit above their current ability level. So they have to work a little hard in order to achieve the piece. Setting a motivating goal is really a part of that.
I see. So in your own experience, when you are giving your students repertoire, how do you define, what is a little bit more difficult? Do you measure it by, let's say, how prepared they are with the lessons, or how long they take to finish a piece? Is there any sort of clue that you can tell us about how to measure
Well,
that?
remember, the first step is looking into your eyes. And when you've been, I'm coming up, I've been teaching almost 55 years now. You kind of know how long things should take for a regular student. Now, a gifted, highly motivated student is going to do it a lot faster. And then, of course, there's that big group at the bottom of the continuum that no matter what you do, they're not going to learn it. So we're probably talking about the group of students in that middle continuum that kind of like it, but aren't super motivated. And our job as teachers is to try to move them further higher in the continuum. So I have a good sense for most of the repertoire, how long things will take to learn. And then I measure how long it's taking this student and try to figure out what kind of goal would motivate them to do better.
I see. So setting a goal for yourself and for your students is obviously important. So what does it mean, though, when you say, to choose pieces that, that accomplishes that goal, or to choose pieces that lead to success? How do you do it?
Psychology identifies two types of interest. And one is called situational interest. And let me try. I hope I can do a good job because I know you'll understand it if I explain it. Situational interest is just a passing interest in something. You have fun one time and you think, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I could learn Spanish and then I could go to Mexico and have fun talking to the natives. But actually, when you actually figure out how much work it would be to learn Spanish, you don't want to do it. It's just a thought. It's a passing interest, something you thought was fun one day that actually you don't follow up on that. In psychology, that's called a situational interest. Then there's deeper personal interests that are part of you and makes you want to persevere in an activity, even though every moment isn't pleasurable or every moment isn't easy. So our goal as teachers is to find something that students have that's a situational interest and turn it into a personal interest.
I see. So how do you do that? Could you elaborate a little bit?
Every student's different.
Right.
Some people, you kind of have to know them. Lots of times within a family, there's one parent more than the other or a grandparent that's really interested in piano. So you use that. Oh, your mom's going to be so proud of you. Oh, your mom told me Beethoven's her favorite composer, something like that. That'll work. Some students get very motivated for public performances. They may not care if the teacher is mad at them, but they don't want to embarrass themselves in front of their peers. So that's a motivating thing. Lots of times little kids like pieces that in some way hook into their pre-existing interests. Maybe they like cowboys. Maybe they like dolls. Maybe they like whatever it is. You find pieces that pertain to something they're already interested in, and then you build on it.
Gotcha. I've read something about, along the same lines, that there are intrinsic and extrinsic motivations for students. I was wondering what you think about those, and which one do you prefer when you are, giving your students motivations?
This is an ongoing dialogue in psychology and in scientific research and between teachers. And the real answer is there is no answer. So, because both actually are powerful motivators. And we see if you do too much of one more than the other, doesn't really work. So if you overuse rewards, only use rewards, kids get the idea, well, I'm not going to do anything unless somebody gives me a reward. On the other hand, in piano, well, Brian, you and I are professionals, so we can tell the truth to each other. There's a lot of just plain hard work and drudgery that you have to do in order to reach the goal. And it's kind of silly to expect a younger student to be willing to do that without some kind of payoff in the near future. It's proven.
Even for adults sometimes, right?
Sure, it's proven not to work, that you say, you're going to thank me in 10 years from now.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty old and I don't know what I'm going to do in 10 years, so I don't think I'm going to make that trade-off. I need something that I want pretty sooner than that.
So personally, what are some of your favorite ways, and what are some of your favorite things? How do you set goals and opportunities for your students when you're choosing repertoire?
It's two things. First of all, I have this idea of what skills I want every student to learn. It was interesting to me to watch your opening video and see some of the topics of the workshops, and to see that you've covered a lot of the basics that I think are important. So first of all, I analyzed their skill level. And then I set them on a program that will develop the skills hooked into something I know they like. So I do a lot of one of my early training was Russian school training, which always stresses a lot of scale work. Well, especially American students aren't all that great on doing scale work. They're not all that willing to do it. They're not willing to put the time in to do it. So I have to hook it into something, a goal that they like to have. So they want to play in their school talent show. I said, well, in order to win the talent show, you got to get your technique better. And the way to do it is to work on scales. So I sort of play, you might say I play piano lesson, let's make a deal with them. I'll let you enter the talent show auditions if you're willing to do this.
Right.
That works.
Right. So I guess talent shows would fall into the category of performance opportunities for students, right? Yeah. So for performance opportunities, this is obviously another debate that people have. Competitions, right? So you can sign your student up to do competitions, or you can sign your students up to just do concerts. What are your views on that?
My personal views are both are really important. And different people are motivated by different things. So competitions work for some, but not for others. And if you're looking at the broad spectrum of piano students, not everybody studies piano because they want to play in public. Some people just study piano because they like the music. That's okay, isn't it? So it just depends on what you do. So these days, once the pandemic is over, I'm usually so busy traveling, I don't have so many pre-college students as I used to. But when I did, I had a whole series of concerts my studio would do. So we just have the regular old piano recital. Then we had one recital where they had to bring in one outside person and play some kind of ensemble piece with them. And it was really fun what they did. Some of them would bring like a really good violin student from their high school and play a Beethoven violin sonata, and they get super motivated. Someone would bring in their mom and they play a very simple duet. It was kind of cute and they loved it. Then I used to do one concert where everybody had to choose a piece in popular styles. And that one was fun. And you know what, Brian? That was the one piece one concert a year I didn't have to nag them to practice.
Right.
All the rest of them took quite a bit of pushing from old Dr. Smith, but not that one. They were totally motivated.
So that's another great idea for expanding your repertoire, right? Playing duets and ensemble works. So
and it was funny too, when you do these different things, sometimes a student that doesn't do so well in what you might call the traditional piano skills really will shine in one of these other areas. And that's great too. It's great for those kids to get a little recognition too.
Right, of course. So we've kind of covered, because when you're playing ensemble music, you're already pretty intermediate to advanced. So I want to bring us back a little bit and talk about some beginner repertoire choices, especially in the very beginning. Obviously, a lot of teachers use method books, right?
Especially in the United States, yeah.
Exactly, especially.
Not necessarily so much in other countries, but especially in the United States.
Okay, well, I'd be interested to hear your views. But what is your opinion on method books, and is it important, and should teachers accompany them by should supplementary materials be accompanied?
Well, big question. In the United States, it's the norm to use a method book. And the comment from teachers around the world that aren't American is that American method books move very slowly. Now, some American teachers think that's a good thing, because that means that gives even non-intuitive learners time to learn everything and get enough repetition that they may not be practicing that much. If you're asking my personal opinion, I agree with those international teachers. I think a lot of American piano methods go too slow.
Okay, so
personally I don't, but I'm not recommending that the entire whole teaching community has to do everything my way. I think a lot of it just depends on you. One good thing about a method is, if it's well written, it covers all the basic skill areas. And we have a situation, I wouldn't say it's unique to the United States. I think it's everywhere. We see a lot of really good teachers that you might say are at the top of the pyramid. And then when we get a little lower down in the pyramid, we see some teachers that love children and like to help and like being around music, but maybe they don't have the greatest musical background. So using a method is a good tool for them because they can make sure they're covering all the basic skills that they may not know about in their own training.
Right, and there are some music theory skills in method books as well, right? But I guess those skills can also be taught without those method books. So what do you when do you if you don't use method books? I'm very curious. What sort of books do you start your students on, and what sort of books, what sort of repertoire books do you give your students?
Well, let me organize my thinking so I explain it briefly. I start by singing, and then I start by playing the songs you sang. So you sing and you sing along while you're playing. And so it's little folk songs that very often are pentatonic, because then you can start them on the black notes, and that's easier for a child's hand because they're higher. Mm-hmm. So I sing and play, and I also do a lot of physical movement. Mm-hmm. So basically, the younger the student, the more I involve physical movement in the lessons. And so this is part of my philosophy that's been, I have some training in Dalcroze and some training in early childhood music, that movement expression is based on movement, and it's based on singing. And a lot of times I think piano teachers make the mistake of focusing on reading too soon, instead of focusing on listening and feeling. So I don't actually introduce reading too soon. A lot of it is just kind of rote learning and singing. And then I gradually introduce little simple songs, some of which I wrote that are so simple you might be embarrassed. And I just introduce reading that way.
I see. And then after that, do you move on to traditional beginner pieces such as, Bach minuets and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I do. I do that too, and I do actually do various little pop songs. There are duets and things. There's lots of duets for beginning students that are very simple, that have an accompaniment that an older brother or sister could play, or the teacher can play, or the mom can play, or something. So actually, there's ensemble stuff right from the beginning, and I do that too.
I see. And so very interesting. So you actually prefer starting with teaching by rote, and how long does that take? Usually, because instead of method books, right? So, how long, how long do you spend? How much time do you spend on those before you move on to actually teaching reading and stuff? That's
a month, not very long. I mean, I start simple reading right away, but we continue. It's not a clear, okay, we're stopping singing and now we're moving reading, just little by little. What I might do is, as we're busy singing our little folk songs, I might introduce some simple question and answer games where I play a little melody on the black keys and they have to play an answer to me on the same black keys. Okay. Then I might show them the notation for that, and we'll do the same thing.
And where are those notations written? Like, if you don't use a book, do you just have printouts for them, or?
I have very limited Sibelius skills. And if it gets too complicated, I have someone that I hire that's sort of inexpensive. I can sort of do it roughly, and I ask him to put it in final form. So it kind of works for me.
Wow.
Maybe when I have a little time, I'll publish this in my own book. But it's kind of hard because whenever you play a method book, it always kind of limits you to kind of step by step, and I'm a little more flexible. And just like everything else, you see some kids really pick right up on it and love it right away. Some other kids need a little more time to kind of get with it.
Right, and I was thinking, if you publish your book, then it would be your method book. So
right. So there again, we're back to the same thing. And then someone else is like, "Oh no, he's spending too much time on this. He shouldn't be doing that. He should be doing that." So,
yeah. So I guess my original question, what I really meant to ask was, so the first real books that you give, like the students have to take home, what would they be then?
First, they start with the theory book, so they're actually writing whole notes right from the beginning and learning about the staff and everything. So it doesn't directly correlate with what they're doing on the piano for a while.
I see.
So they start doing written work right away. And so what I'm doing is trying to use, the research says that the more different parts of the brain you get involved in learning, the better you learn the skill. So I got them involved writing things. You probably know the research that if you write something with a pencil, you remember it better. Isn't that interesting? It's not as good doing it on a laptop. You have to
No, it's
actually
not.
physically write it. So I got them writing right from the beginning. And then I'll say, well, you know, this long note that we're playing, that's a whole note, just like you've been writing in your book. So the rule is experience first, label second.
Gotcha.
They're writing whole notes, but they don't know they're playing whole notes until they've played it for a while.
Right. So experience first, and so you don't just memorize stuff. You actually you know it first, and then you do it, and then you know what it is. I see.
Right.
So we actually have a audience question, so I just want to squeeze that in there.
Sure, let's do it. Yeah.
So P. Michelle, she said, I see a lot of classical music at the higher levels. Is jazz or music, movie music not up to par for high level playing?
Well, I guess everybody has their own opinion. My opinion is it's great.
Okay, so you do give your students some jazz music. Do you have recommendations?
Well,
good materials, books?
My former student Jeremy Siskind, you might know his name, does a lot of great things. Christopher Norton, who I've collaborated. I wouldn't really say his is jazz. It's kind of jazz inflected, more pop music based kind of. But those are both really good composers that have things on an early level.
That's speaking of jazz music. That's very interesting. I have a student who hates. Well, hate is a strong word, but she dislikes classical music in general, but she loves jazz music. So I give her a lot of jazz music, but also some classical music. Do you think? I'm curious. If you have a student like that, would you just go 100% all in jazz music, or would you sort of just mix in a couple classical? Do you think there are, skills not to be missed in classical repertoire?
Well, most jazz players will say that you need your jazz skills as a pianist will be better with a classical foundation. So I just tell the student that, and I don't have them right handy, but I have all kinds of quotes and little videos I can show them so they actually have to believe what I'm saying. It's not just me saying that. And so we do that. And then if I get a student that's really interested in jazz, actually, honestly, Brian, what I would do would send them to another teacher because I'm not really qualified to teach jazz at that high level.
I see.
Little kid jazz, yeah, I can kind of do that. Intermediate jazz, borderline. So.
Right. So you would actually recommend, right? So you would recommend if provided that they know what they want, obviously, right? Sometimes sometimes it takes a while for them to figure out what they really like.
Right. And teenagers sometimes just say things that they've heard or they think they mean it, but they don't really mean it. And so sometimes you just have to kind of ride it out with them. She may think she's interested in jazz, but she may not really know what jazz really is. And when she finds out what it is, that may kill that one right away. You never know.
Right. So speaking of, I don't want to say kicking student out, but just suggesting students to move on to another route. Are there other signals or hints where you might say this is really not for them, and that when do you know? Because obviously you give them motivations and all kinds of, and you think of ways to encourage them to practice. But when, like you said in the beginning, when life gets in the way, when they quit, they're in that age. As a teacher, what are our responsibilities in that?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know what to do sometimes, because sometimes, especially when kids are in early teen years. I'm sure I gave my parents and my teachers a really hard time. Luckily, in my case, it's so long ago, I forgot. But this is a tough age for young people growing up, and this is the age they're deciding who they want to be, and they experiment with a lot of behaviors that to us adults don't always seem very positive, and that's just part of growing up. So sometimes there's a benefit to hanging in there with a student, but if they're really not doing anything, and they just aren't practicing, and they aren't motivated to do it, and they won't do what you tell them, I think it's time for a change.
Okay. I see. Well, we have around 5 minutes left, so I will squeeze in one or two more questions for you. So we talked about the beginner level repertoire. Moving on to the intermediate though, what I'm used to, in especially I grew up in China and moved to the States. So people usually just go the traditional route of Sonatina album, maybe two-part inventions. That's really about it. Very little romantic work. I was wondering, is that a route that you also recommend, and would you recommend going out of that box and exploring more repertoire?
Well, part of the problem is, yeah, I would recommend doing that. But part of the problem is that lots of times teachers don't know what repertoire to do, and they don't know what's available. And if they're looking, they don't know where to find it.
Right.
And that's a big problem. Now, when I was your age, every town had a music store, and you could go into the music store and kind of look around, and lots of times they had a very knowledgeable salesperson that could give you good advice. Now, all that music is still available online, but I don't know how you'd find it if you didn't already know it's there.
Right.
So that's a big problem when, even somebody like you, Brian, with your excellent training, when you get out into the world teaching and you realize you're probably not going to be teaching the Tchaikovsky concerto that often, but what you really need is some good intermediate romantic pieces, but where are those? And who is it that wrote them? It's kind of hard to find. Exactly. So that's what I think the problem is. I think there are pieces like that. So what I tell teachers to do that are kind of looking around for that is to get one of the anthologies. And there's lots of them. ABRSM publishes some excellent ones. Some of the American publishers do too. And they'll lots of times have a selection of pieces that are all been graded to be approximately on the same level. And we'll have a mix of like greatest hits of intermediate music, along with some composers you maybe never heard of, but actually are really fun. And that's a way to find out what works for you and what doesn't. And then you can kind of explore on your own.
Do you have any favorites, books, songs, editors, I don't know, that you would recommend to those teachers who may not be as experienced?
Well, I have another room downstairs with my studio, and if I took you down there with the iPad, you might mistake it for a music store. I've got so much music, so I have lots of things. So since
why don't you give me like three favorites or something? Yeah, up to you. Yeah.
I think there's since I'm old, I probably like old-fashioned things more. But there's a famous authority on keyboard playing was a composer too. His name is Howard Ferguson. This is all published by ABRSM, Associated Board Publishing. He had a series of anthologies called a keyboard anthology. Those are always very carefully edited and really well graded. So another favorite editor is the American Jane McGraw, who just retired from University of Oklahoma. She really has an eye for pieces that students like. So she really knows what a 13-year-old student will think is fun. And so her anthology, anything edited by her will always have a mix of kind of famous pieces, and she'll always stick in a couple ones that you might not have thought of or maybe you never even heard of, but students like it just as well. So those are two that I think are really excellent and are also easy to get a hold of, which is part of it too.
Great. Probably can get it easily on Amazon, I hope.
I think so, yeah.
Great. So those are very, very, very specific and great advice. I'm sure our teachers who are watching or will watch in the future will take away a lot from. So thank you very much for
My
those
pleasure, Brian.
advice. Okay, so it is 8:30. We're right on the dot. Why don't we go into the masterclass portion? All right.
Let's do.
Thank you so much. All right. So the first student we have is her name is Emerson, and she will join us right now. Hi, Emerson.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I'll leave it up to you guys, and I'll be in the background.
Very good. Hi, Emerson. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Are you playing Clementi for me?
Yes.
Very good. Can you remind me which sonatina it is? I have my music, but I forgot which one it was.
Sonatina in G. I think Sonatina in G.
D, okay. And are you playing just the first movement, or do you have both movements?
I think think it's just the first movement. I'm actually.
All right. That's good. I'm just checking because, I get mixed up sometimes. This is really fun. All right. Are you ready?
I think she said G, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm ready when you are, Emerson. Excellent job, Emerson. Well, you're making my job really hard because you've already fixed most of the problems. Congratulations. I'm going to have to really work hard to think of some good suggestions for you. So I really appreciate you've done a good job of practicing your 16th notes. They're nice and even. A couple little problems everywhere, but it's hard to be perfect every single minute. And you're doing a good job of bringing out the melody. So all the basic things are really good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now we can work on some of the higher level things. And so here's what I want you to think about. Whenever a composer writes a piece, he's always trying to express a certain feeling or a certain idea. So what feeling do you get? You've been living with this piece for a while and been doing some good practicing on it. So you've been living it for a while. What feeling do you think it is?
I get very definitely not sad or not angry, but definitely more of a happy and more jumpy feel.
Yeah, I totally am with you. Something on the happy side.
Yeah.
Of the spectrum.
Like the 3/4 beat gives it almost like a dancing feel, like a waltz.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I don't know, you probably have played some dances, but when I've played a million dances, and it's funny how many of them are in 3/4. That's really a good point that you made. It's interesting. There are some dances that aren't, but I think the majority are in 3/4. You're right. That's that dancing feeling. And again, I think you do kind of a good job of that. Now, let me ask you a second question along these same lines. Would you say it keeps the same feeling all the way through?
I feel like there are in the middle. Yeah, no, I think it definitely changes a little bit.
I do too. And here's what I think you could do a better job of is showing those changes of mood a little more. Now, of course, when we're learning a piece at the beginning, we're so busy just trying to learn it. It's kind of impossible to think of everything else, but I think you're ready. All right, now, part of this, one more thing I want to tell you about, and then we'll get to work, is something called body language. Have you heard about that?
A little bit.
Do you have an idea what it is?
Is it how you show the piece?
Yeah, well, it actually doesn't pertain just to piano playing. It also pertains to daily life. So how about if I met you and I said, "Oh, Emerson, I'm so happy today." Would you believe me?
No.
Why not?
Because you're not showing that you're happy.
Yeah, my body language says the opposite, doesn't it?
Yeah.
My body language says I'm sad or tired or something like that. And it wouldn't work if I said, "Emerson, I'm really sad today." See, that doesn't work either. So see, it's not just the words that you say, but it's the feeling that your body gives and your facial expression too. And every pianist has to be a good actor. So what I want to work on with you is just showing the mood changes a little more and just being a good actor in your body language. I wouldn't say that you're bad. I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. I just want to see if we can improve it.
Okay.
All right. So let's get to work. Do you have the music nearby? Can you put that on the stand? Because I'm going to refer to some specific measures. So if you can put that up on the music rack, that'll help.
Sorry, it's over here.
Yeah, good. All right. Now, in the 19th century, when Clementi lived, they called him the father of the piano because he had so many great ideas about teaching. He had so many, and a lot of teachers are watching us and they may not know that Clementi was the first millionaire piano teacher. So that's good news for teachers too. He was such a good teacher, he got really rich. So I want to encourage all our teachers about this too. So we always want to, as we're kind of planning how we're going to interpret the music, in other words, how we're going to express the feelings, we want to see if the composer gave us any markings that helped us. So what's the tempo for this one? Just tell us, because the teachers may not know. What do you see at the beginning?
It says 63 through 69 beats per measure.
Yeah, and that's the metronome marking. And Clementi didn't actually say that. That's okay, though. That's a good suggestion. But he didn't give us a metronome. But he gave us a word. Do you see any word up there by the metronome marking?
Allegro.
What does that mean?
It means, I think, like, kind of fast, but not.
It just means fast. But every tempo marking has a speed. Okay, good. That's fast. But it also has a feeling. And so allegro means fast and happy. So see, that helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Do you see any other words there at the beginning?
I see it says dulce.
Yeah. What does that mean?
I'm not exactly sure.
All right. So it's funny. When I was your age, years and years ago, we had to have a music dictionary. And you know what? In my downstairs studio, I have my music dictionary still. And do you know how much money it cost? $1. I don't think you could buy anything for $1 today, but that's when I was young, that's how much they cost. And nowadays you can look up everything online, but I notice even with my own students, Emerson, they don't always look everything up. So that's the first thing I want you to remember from our lesson, is that it's your job to look up all the markings, because they'll give you some kind of clues what the feeling should be. Well, dolce means sweet and gentle. Now, I want you to think about it. How could you be happy but gentle at the same time? Do you have any ideas? What kind of feeling would that be? See, because a lot of times I notice when young people are happy, they're also kind of noisy.
Yeah.
I bet if I went to your school and I saw all the kids being happy, I bet it would be pretty loud. Do you think I'm right? Yeah. But Clementi is telling us something different. So what ideas do you have about that?
Could be like more light, maybe. Like
Yeah.
more jumpy, but like soft and light.
Yeah, I think so too. And so I think that's the first thing you could do, is play a little softer. Now remember, we're on Zoom, and Zoom isn't really the greatest for piano lessons because the sound is designed for speaking. So you might say, well, Dr. Smith, I'm already playing soft. And I might be like, well, it doesn't sound soft to me. And you know what? It might be Zoom's problem, but there's nothing we can do. I do think you could play a little softer at the beginning. Now, before we do, let me ask you one more question. In your life, when would you feel happy, but happy in a gentle, quiet way? Can you think of something in your life that would have that feeling?
When I'm spending time with my family,
Yeah.
we have a roof deck. It's just like,
yeah.
Not like we're
Excellent.
yelling and being loud. We're just relaxed but happy.
Yeah, you can have a happy feeling, but just be sitting quietly. And maybe you and your family are doing some favorite activity that you guys like to do together. What do you guys like to do that's on the quiet side?
We like to, a lot of times we just like to sit and relax, just be around each other rather than like talking.
Yeah, I think that's nice. That's the feeling at the beginning. So that's what I want you to do, is soften it down a little bit and save the energy for later. All right, give it a try. All right, good. Let's work and polish a little bit. Yeah, excellent start. It's already a bit softer, and that's exactly what I want. So you notice when we're talking, and each one of us says a sentence, do you notice how the sentence at the end of the sentence gets softer? See, I don't say, Emerson, how are you today? And you say, oh, I'm really great.
Yeah.
Actually, you'd say, how are you today? See how it ends a little softer? Musical phrases are kind of like that too. So what I'm hearing from you, let's see how our sound is. I don't know if you can hear me play or not. See how that last note of that first phrase has a little accent? Could you hear it? That's what I'm hearing from you too. And then that doesn't give it that dolce feeling.
Yeah.
See, I might accent the last word. Like if you and I are talking and I notice a giant man-eating alligator is coming up behind you and they're going to get you, I might say, Emerson, look out, right? I wouldn't say, Emerson, look out. You're just about to be devoured. Okay, have a nice day. No, I say, oh, something exciting. You might accent the last note, but normally it's more like this. So can we get the ends of your phrases a little softer? Understand? Give it a try. Yeah, very good. That's exactly right. Now, Clementi Sonatinas are so popular, there's a lot of different editions, and so it might be yours is a little different, but I notice in the first four measures, there's no crescendo and diminuendo, and then in the second four measures, there is one. Is that the same for you?
In the first four measures and second four measures, it doesn't show that, but in the third set of four measures, it does.
Exactly the same. So what I'm hearing from you is we've got two similar phrases, but actually the way the expression in them is a little different, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't hear that when you play, they sound too much the same. So I'll say it a different way. The second set of four measures needs to be, the feeling needs to be a little stronger. See what I mean? Okay, give it a try and keep going this time. You're doing great. Oh, Emerson, I still heard that accent just a little bit. Not bad, but it could be better. Oh, I love that. Good. All right. Now, one more thing on the first day measures, and then we'll push on. What should your body language be telling me?
Like light and sweet and happy.
Yeah. So can you show me a little more energy in your body? What I'm seeing now is nice piano student. And what I want to see is happy piano student. There's kind of a difference, isn't there? So just imagine you're sitting with your family and relaxing, and just move a little bit more relaxed way. Good. All right. Now we're in measure 9. Do you have measure numbers in your music?
Yeah.
Okay. So measure 9, I think the feeling changes. See, I noticed that we've got some sharps now that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
That's telling us we're getting into a different harmony. So let me ask you a question. Do you think the feeling is getting more energetic, or do you think it's relaxing a little more?
I think it's getting more energetic.
I feel the same way. So here's what I want you to do. Play a little louder and lean in a little more. So the leaning in, see, just watch me. When I lean in, what is my body telling you?
That it's getting like more exciting.
Right? And that will help your sound get bigger too. You understand? So let's start in measure 5. Can you start there? And then when you get to measure 9, lean in a little bit more and show me a little more excitement. Oh, I love that, because I was just going to tell you to do that and I didn't need to tell you. You did it yourself. You made a diminuendo and you sat back when we returned to the different feeling. Exactly right. Already it's getting better. Before I kind of heard everything the same. Now I'm hearing sweet and relaxed, a little bit more energy, return to sweet and relaxed. Great. Start measure 17 and continue. Emerson, I think it could still be a little softer. You didn't quite get soft enough. And don't forget that thing about the last note of phrases. Not, just be careful. Yep. Now, I think in measure 29, your forte could be louder. And then when we get to measure 32, the fortissimo could really be louder. Yeah, I think you got to, you know, performing isn't the same thing as just playing for fun. When you perform, you always have to exaggerate. Because when people are listening, they need to get the feeling a little stronger than just normally in daily life. So I really want you to overdo that forte and fortissimo.
So in measure 32, it's supposed to be fortissimo?
Yeah, what do you have in your music?
I have mezzo piano there.
Really? Well, we really do have different editions. So here you have mezzo piano. Oh my goodness. So what do you have in measure 29?
In measure 29, it's mezzo forte.
Interesting. All right, so where's the first time you see forte in your music? Is it measure 49?
No, measure 49. I think it doesn't go up to forte in this one. Only mezzo forte.
Wow, interesting. Well, let's stick with what your music says. You know, Clementi Sonatinas are kind of interesting because if Clementi were still alive today, he'd be super rich because piano students always play them and they have for almost 200 years. So what happens is there's so many different editions and some of them are kind of different. So I don't know which one is the right one, but let's stick with the one you do. Okay, well, that explains why I didn't hear the crescendo. Okay, never mind, forget about it. Let's start in measure 25. Good. All right. So that place is mezzo piano. You know, when you have a melody that's high and your left hand stays in the middle, usually you have to be really careful to get the left hand softer. Because what happens is the high notes have a little difficulty coming out. So what I want you to do in that mezzo piano part is get the left hand. A good rule is if it's mezzo piano, that means the right hand's going to be mezzo forte and the left hand's going to be pianissimo. And see, together they cancel each other out to mezzo piano. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not exactly your fault. It's the way the piece is written. When we have that high melody, we got to be really careful to keep the left hand soft. Can you take it right there? That's measure 32, mezzo piano. Good. Emerson, I think we could get that dance feeling a little better, and the left hand's going to help with this. So listen to my left hand. Oops, I haven't practiced this piece in a long time. Well, do you hear the left hand has a little bit feeling beat number 1 is a little strong? 1, 2, 3, 1. And that gives it that dance feeling. Could I hear that a little more? Yeah, good try. Keep going. Sounded great. Ooh, Emerson, I love the way you're moving your body here. And I didn't even have to tell you about it. You're just kind of doing it. Do it more. So, you know, it's funny. Remember when you're doing good performing body language, you have to kind of get used to it. What inside ourselves, it feels like it's too much. Now, before you came on, I was telling Brian, you know, partly because of the pandemic, but partly just because so many things are online. I do a lot of lessons and lectures online. And so when I first watched a video of myself, I realized I don't smile enough. See, inside myself, I think I'm smiling, but I'm not smiling at all. I look too serious. So I said, okay, remember, smile more when you're giving a lecture. So when I did it, I felt so fakey. I'd be like, okay, go to measure 32. And I was like, that looks so ridiculous. And then when I watched the video, it looked fine. Inside myself, it felt ridiculous, but actually in the performance, it looked fine. So what I want you to do is do exactly what you're doing, but exaggerate it. And it may not feel natural inside your body, but when you watch a video of yourself, you'll see it actually really works. So even if it feels a little bit embarrassing, give it a try. You'll see it'll work. Just like me smiling. I don't know why I don't smile, I just forgot. Okay, take it right there and measure 41, can you?
41, yes.
Nice. Emerson, that's a place where, again, I think the mood change could be a little stronger. So when we get to measure 47, 48, 49, even though it's just mezzo forte, the fact that the right hand is playing more 16th notes gives it more energy.
Yeah.
So can you just give me a little more pep in that section? I want to hear more dolce here. And then when we get here, more energy. Give it a shot.
Should I go from measure 30?
Yeah, that's right. And then we can hear the change. Yeah, good suggestion. Yeah, let's take a minute and work on that trill. Everybody has trouble there. In fact, I would say that's the hardest part in the piece. Do you agree?
Yeah.
It's like one measure that's miserable, and the rest of it is a little bit hard, but not that bad. So the first thing that's going to help is let's practice it torture slow. Do you know what I mean, torture slow?
Very, very slow.
Yeah. In fact, if one of my students says, oh, Dr. Smith, this is so slow, I think I'm going to die, then I'll be like, right tempo. That's exactly the right practice tempo. So slow that our brain has to think really hard. So let me hear it, okay? Yeah. Now let's just take the measure with the trill in it. That's measure 54. And let's see if we can get it perfect. That wasn't bad, but I know you know it isn't just quite exactly perfect. So I don't know, in your family, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have one brother.
Younger or older?
Older.
Okay. Well, I'm the oldest one in my family, and I have 3 sisters. So I know all about younger siblings. And so I got to watch my sisters ever since they were babies. And then, you know, when you're baby, first the baby just sits in your lap, and then the baby crawls, and then eventually the baby walks. See, you can't learn to walk if you don't learn to crawl first. So that's why I'm making you go so slow to get it perfect. I want to see if you can crawl, and then we'll speed it up and you can walk. But you can't walk if you can't crawl. So we're in the crawling stage. See what I mean? I guess in your family, you're kind of the baby, so but you've probably seen babies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So just take it right on the trill, and I want to hear. Almost, not quite. Shall we try it again? We're getting there, but not quite.
It starts on the step 2, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, let's talk about that. I want you to check with your teacher about this. I'm going to show you how I teach it, and I teach it in a little different way. But here's the thing, sometimes it's hard to change things when you already know a piece. So let me show you how I teach it, and then you talk to your teacher and see what he or she wants you to do, okay? So what I do is I start on finger 3, and we go. And that makes the ending a lot easier. See, it's a lot smoother when you start on the 3. You want to give it a try?
Yeah.
Emerson, start on your 3rd finger. Start on the top. There you go. Yep. Nailed it. So I think that's a lot easier. Now, let's see. Here's the second step. Okay, you're getting the crawling pretty good. But I want to see, can you do it 3 times in a row? See, that's the proof. See, 1 time could just be good luck, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3, if we can do it 3 or 5 times, or if it's really hard, even 10 times, then you know you really are solid on it.
With no breaks in between, or just like a little pause?
A little pause is okay. Ooh, 2. Uh-oh, we're back to 0. Not quite. All right, let's just take a break for a minute. Sometimes our brain just needs a minute to reset. So just let's take a break. Tell me something fun you did today.
Well, it was my birthday today.
Oh no, what did you do? That's so exciting.
I went on a Zoom with my family. That was really fun, and we celebrated my birthday.
Did you have your cake already, or are you going to have it later?
I had it
or both.
Before
What flavor was it?
It's chocolate.
Oh no, you're so lucky. I'm jealous. Okay, let's go back and do it. Now, here's what we did. Just so you know, because you can remember this when you practice. Sometimes when you're working on something that's a little bit hard and you're struggling with it, it helps just for a minute to take your mind off it and then come back. Sometimes your brain gets tired and it needs a break. So thinking about chocolate cake is a real good break. So let's see if we can get our 3 times in a row. Not quite, almost. One, good girl. Nailed it, 2. So Emerson, when you're practicing and you have a trouble spot like this, remember this little trick of doing things times in a row. You know what? They mentioned it in piano methods even hundreds of years ago. So it couldn't be more old-fashioned, but you know what? It really works. So let's not take any more time on this. Let's push on because we're almost out of time anyway. But you just remember that trick. Every piece has a hard measure in it. Whenever you have a hard measure, do that times in a row, starting torture slow, and you'll usually get it just fine. Good, let's push on. So let's just continue right after that, okay? And you can go back to playing regular tempo now. Yeah, Emerson, we've got that high melody thing going again. So can you get your left hand a little softer? Just take it right there. You're doing great. So here, I noticed this the first time too. This little section here, starting in measure 61, that's the one place your 16ths aren't quite clear.
Yeah.
I'd say everything else is really pretty good, but this is a little trouble spot. So here's what you're going to do. Torture slow, times in a row. I think it just needs a little extra practice because you're using your 4th finger and that's a little weaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, we're almost out of time. So let's do this. Let's take our last minute and let's summarize everything we learned. Because, you know, the whole purpose of having a lesson with another teacher is just to learn some new ideas. So I want you to think for 1 minute and you tell me some of the important things that you got out of this lesson. And then if you have bad luck and forget, I'll remind you, okay? So you tell me, what did you learn?
Well, at the beginning, I remember you said that I need to, if there's something unclear in the piece, I should look up the meaning. And then there's the body language part about showing the piece not only through the piano, but through acting, and about playing light but still being happy. And then went over how to change the mood in the piece, so that you're changing the mood. And then we worked on this little part, changing the mood of this one.
Yeah.
On the trill to go very, very slow.
Yeah, and that works for any treble spot. It wouldn't have to be a trill. There's always something that's a little hard. Okay, one thing I wanted to remind you about is that thing about high melodies that you have to be careful and keep your left hand soft. Other than that, I think you did a really great job of remembering. Well, thanks for being such a great student. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good way to celebrate your birthday is having a piano lesson. That's what I think. But then I'm a piano teacher, so naturally I think that.
I agree. Happy birthday, Emerson. Thank you so much for playing for us. All right. So we have our next student. Her name is Sophia. Just takes a second for her to turn on everything. Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
You might need to do the unlock screen.
Wait, what did I do?
Yep, I can see you now. Sophia, you're a little bit sideways.
Yes, your screen is sideways. So
Oh, no.
there we go. All right.
All right, we're ready.
Wait, do I just go?
Yep. Sophia, nice job. And before we get to work, I wanted to tell you, I really appreciate you playing this piece because I think a lot of our audience probably never heard of Melanie Bonis. How did you find out about it? Did your teacher tell you, or how did you know about her?
Oh no, it was for this other competition thing.
Oh.
And it got canceled because of it.
Well, yeah, but we'll start up. We'll get everything going again pretty soon. Yeah, well, I never heard of her for a long time, and then I used to teach at the Royal Conservatory in Toronto, and some of the Canadian students were playing her pieces. But for some reason, I don't know if you noticed, they always put her name like MEL period Bonis. So I thought it was a man named Mel Bonis. I didn't know who it was, and then finally I did some research, and I found out it was a lady French composer, which I think is really cool, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when Brian was talking to me earlier, he said, you know, sometimes teachers don't know about good romantic style pieces. And so I think it's really good that our teachers learn about her, because she wrote a lot of good piano pieces. And some of them are quite a bit easier than this. So, you know, for a younger student than you, that's a good one. And then some of them are super, super hard. So this one's kind of in the middle. This is a good one. So good job. All right. Now, what does meditation mean?
Wait, what?
The word, you know, it's called meditation. Yeah. So what does that actually mean?
Like, I don't know how. Like, I know what it is. I don't know how you would like actually.
Well, can you do your best, and then I can help you out if you get lost.
Like when you like just sit down and like clear your head, kind of, and like.
Yeah. It's like quiet thinking. Yeah. Quiet thinking. It could be a memory that you're thinking about. Another word might be daydreaming. That might be kind of good. All right. So when do you like to daydream?
Yeah, I guess so.
I would like to daydream more, but my problem is I have too much work to do. I would like to daydream, but I don't have time to daydream. How about you? Are you the same? Because I bet you have a lot of homework and everything, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just remember one of those daydreaming motions. And when you're feeling that way, you're very relaxed and your movements are very smooth. Now, I'm sure you're a little nervous when you started. I thought when you got into the middle of the piece, your motions got a little smoother and more relaxed. But that's what we need from the beginning too. Now, I see you doing something that's really good. And I saw you, for example, Sophia, do you have measure numbers in your piece? Do you have your music? Why don't you put it on the music rack so we'll work on it a little bit. Got it ready? Okay. Do you have measure numbers written in or no?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. So starting in about measure 22, I saw some really good arm motions from you, and I saw you going, and you're kind of doing that motion. Can you see my hands? When I teach that to students, I call it pushing circles. So you're kind of gently pushing in the piano. What does your teacher call it?
Like raising your wrist. I don't know.
Got it. Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't matter. Every teacher has a little different way of doing it. I want to see more of that at the beginning. So I'm going to play the melody starting in measure 3. Do you see my arm? So see, I'm doing that kind of motion, and that will make the melody a little smoother. Just you try it. Just play the melody alone starting in measure 3. Yeah, very good. Now, be careful in this kind of music, this late romantic music, we call it. Everything has to be very smooth. So be careful when you move your hand, you don't accent the last note of the first phrase or thump the accent of the next phrase. I know you're not doing it on purpose, you're just a little bit bad luck, but sometimes I hear this. Did you hear it? Too thumpy. And so a lot of this music is supposed to sound like a sigh. You know, like when you're daydreaming and you're thinking of a happy memory and you go, ah, that's so great. And if you accent the last note, it sounds more like a burp. We don't want that feeling. So will you do it again and be careful of those last notes?
I'll do it again.
Just only the melody, yeah. Oh, nice. I like that. All right, let's put our hands together and play from the beginning. That sounds really good. Mm-hmm. Zoom isn't the greatest thing for piano lessons, but we're doing our best. So I kind of lost you. I think we had a little burp in the internet there just for a minute. I could see you playing, but I couldn't quite hear it. Do you mind playing it one more time, just so I can hear it a little better? It's not your fault. I think it's an internet problem. Good. Okay, I'm going to stop you. So we have 2 measures of introduction, right? The melody doesn't really start till measure 3. You know what I mean? So these 16th notes have to be in the background. And what's happening to you is when we go to the right hand, I hear a little accent. And I don't want that note to pop out too loud because it's not an important note. It's just like a wash of sound in a beautiful painting. Do you like to draw?
Yes.
Oh, that's nice. Well, think of it. Have you ever done a watercolor? I have a friend who likes to paint for fun, and she says watercolors are the hardest thing. Is that what you think too? She said because it dries right away and you can't go back and fix it.
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't really know.
Yeah, think of it, it's like a watercolor, just a smooth color. And we want to be careful we don't want a little right in the middle of it. You understand? Try it again. Okay, that was better, but I'm still hearing this. So I'm going to suggest a different fingering for you. Can you see my hands? I want to do left hand for 2 notes and then right hand for 2 notes. So then you don't have that big cross. That's what's causing that accent we don't want. Just try it super slowly. Yeah, better. Yeah, Sophia, I think that's a better fingering that'll help you get it smoother. It's going to take a little practice. We cannot get it perfect in 2 minutes, of course. So, but I think that fingering will be a little better for you. All right, let's keep going. Yep, keep going. You're doing great. So, Sophia, notice that measure 3 to measure 6, there's no crescendo, and then in measure 7, there is a crescendo. Can you see what I mean? I want you to exaggerate that crescendo in 7. I don't feel it's quite intense enough.
Wait, what?
It's not quite intense. Intense means feeling being strong. Measure 7 is your happiest memory. So measure 3 to measure 6 are like kind of calm feelings, and then measure 7 gets really happy, and then it relaxes again. I don't mean it gets sad. It just has more energy and then less energy. You understand? So let's start right in measure 3. Yeah, Sophia, what do you see? What dynamic do you see in measure 11?
Oh, piano.
Piano? I don't hear you doing that. Did you forget about that? Or do you think you're doing it? I can see you know this piece really well. And what happens is sometimes when you need to know a piece really well, you don't check the music and you forget things. Everybody does. So I'm not really hearing you get off in measure 11. And that song is supposed to be kind of, yeah, we froze for a minute there. Did you hear everything I said?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, give it a try. Let's start in measure 7. So suddenly soft when you get to measure 11. Good. Okay. Now let's work on measure 14. Do you notice that on beat number 1 we have a chord that has lots of dissonance in it, and then the chord on beat number 2 isn't dissonant? Do you know what I'm talking? Do you know what I mean dissonant? And Sophia, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ask me, because I'm just getting to know you. So sometimes I might use a word you don't know. Do you know what I mean dissonant?
I think I get it. I've never heard that.
So what is it you think it is? I heard you say something, but I couldn't quite hear it. What is dissonance?
Like a lot of them close together, like when they're next to each other.
Yeah, there are a bunch of notes that don't all fit into one normal chord. So we have dissonance, and then when it is in a chord, we see consonance. Now, Sophia, that's such a common thing in music. It has a name, and we have it. People usually use a German word. It's called a Seufzer, and a Seufzer means a sigh. So see, in a way, that kind of fits the feeling, doesn't it? Of sitting and thinking quietly. So in a Seufzer, the first note is always louder, and the second note is always softer. So just be careful about that. Some of your Seufzers, I hear this. So that's not the right feeling. We got to hear strong, relax. Here's another one in measure 15. See what I mean? So why don't you take it back? I like that piano in measure 11, by the way. Let's start right in measure 11. Yeah, I got it. Good. All right. Now we're in measure 17. It says con molto espressione. So what does that mean exactly?
With a lot of expression.
Yeah. So that means this crescendo is the most intense of all of them. The biggest crescendo with the strongest feeling. Can you show me? Yeah, that was good. Now, notice that in the left hand, we have one of the things that makes it intense is now we have 2 melodies. Do you see those quarter notes in the left hand? So we have, hear that hidden melody at the top? Can you do your left hand alone? Sophia, it might be just the zoom, because maybe you're doing it great, but the zoom isn't showing it. But I think what I'm hearing is we need to hear more of that second melody. So give it a shot, okay? Nice. Now put them both together and make sure I hear the right hand melody and that top of the left hand melody. Do your best. You're fine. We don't expect, you can't really get something perfect when it's brand new. We don't expect that. So we all appreciate you trying your best on these new ideas. Don't worry about it too much. Just do your best and give it a try. Yeah, I heard it better. All right, now I want to try an experiment. Before we go on to the next section, I think your overall tempo is a little too slow. So I want to try an experiment. Are you up for being a little bit brave? I want to go back to the beginning and play that whole section faster.
Okay.
And now, we're not going to expect it perfect the first time. So don't put that pressure on yourself, okay? Just do your best. I think it'll sound better a little faster. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. When you're playing, I almost hear like there's 6 beats in every measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But what I want to hear is 3 beats in a measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and so we need a little faster tempo to feel 3. Do you see what I mean? All right, give it a shot. And even if you make a couple mistakes, we'll live with it, all right? Faster tempo.
Wait, how fast again? Sorry.
Let me see if I can play this. Did you hear it? Yeah, now, good. Let's work right there. Yeah, good job. Actually, you did quite a good job for the first try. So that I think that's a little better tempo. So maybe just because you're having a lesson with a strange teacher, actually that sounded really good. Maybe you're just being a little too cautious. Maybe that is your normal tempo. That sounded really good. I like that. So just a little bit faster really sounds good. Now, measure 21. Where's the melody now? Which hand?
Oh, the left hand?
Yeah, it's the top of the left hand. And then it switches back to the, so can I hear that left hand melody a little more? I'm hearing the right hand a little too much there and not enough of the left hand melody. Got it. Okay, try it again and keep going this time. Good. Now I want to ask you a question. Yep, sounding good. I still think we need a little faster tempo, but let's get to that in a minute. Measure 22, it says con calore. What does that mean?
With heat or like
Could you say it again? I couldn't quite hear you.
with heat?
Yeah, so what does that mean with heat? That doesn't even make any sense, does it?
Like with, is it like with passion or something?
More passion. What kind, in your life, what things are you passionate about?
I don't know.
Well, I have a student that's passionate about chocolate. Whenever I want her to get excited about something, I say, just think about chocolate, and it totally works. Now, for me, not that much. I'm not really a chocoholic, are you?
Sometimes.
I like it okay, but I'm not really intense about it. But what might get me really excited would be if I could take a trip somewhere really exciting to a beautiful, I like beautiful scenery. So if I could take a trip somewhere and see beautiful scenery, I'd be like, wow, yeah, that's cool. What about for you? What would it be for you that would get you feeling very heatful? I just made up that word.
Sorry, I'm trying to.
Somewhere fun to go, somewhere fun to eat, some activity that you just love.
I like reading, I guess.
Okay. All right, reading a favorite book. What kind of books are your favorites? Do you like mysteries or do you like fantasies or what's your favorite kind?
Both. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like that.
Okay, so yeah, good. All right, so try that. think of your favorite thing about reading, right? When you get to that measure, it needs a little more excitement. You understand? So let's back up a measure. Let's start a measure 21.
Mm-hmm. Should I play?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Good. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I really got it that time. Good. That really worked. That's exactly right. Now, I want to try it again at a faster tempo. And then I want you to notice that in measure 26, the heat feeling dies away. And now we're back to dreamy. So can you show me that pianissimo a little better? So take it again the same place and just give me a little more contrast. Yep, good. Let's start right there. That's measure 28. Can you go a little faster? Yeah, good. Keep going. We got a few more minutes. Yeah, let's work a little further. Sounds nice. Yeah, and Sophia, I really wanted to compliment you because your rubato is really very good. Do you know, have you heard that word rubato? What does it mean? Just in case some of our listeners aren't quite sure, can you give us a good definition?
Like the flow of the music, kind of, I think, or like when you slow down or speed
Yeah,
up.
yeah, when you slow down a little bit just to express the feeling, and a lot of times it comes at the ends of phrases, and you're doing a very nice job of it. And what you're doing that's so good is some students, when they play rubato, they slow down so much it sounds like it's stopping and it sounds like the piece is over. But you're doing a nice job of just slowing down a little bit, but not so much stopping. So that was really nice. Well, I can see we're almost out of time. We didn't quite make it to the end, but still we got a lot of good things done. So let's just review everything we did. So what did we work on about your tempo?
Oh, it was faster.
Yeah, you tend to slow down sometimes. It could just be because you're a little nervous because you're playing for a strange teacher. So remember, you as soon as I tell you to play fast, you always do a good job and it sounds great. All right, what else did we work on?
The left hand fingering for the
Yep.
well, no, both of the hands fingering for the beginning, and then also the part after that, like more like.
Yeah, that's right. Good job. And a lot of times I had you when it got soft, I wanted you to play a little softer. Did you notice that? So pretty much every piano and pianissimo, my marking, I wanted it to be a little softer. Okay, what did we learn? Do you remember the word seufzer?
Oh yeah,
What does that mean?
like a sigh.
Yeah, and so remember in a music seufzer, the first note is always a little louder and the second note's a little softer. Yeah, good. So take all those ideas and apply them to the whole piece, and I think you're going to have a great performance. It's already good. We're just trying to see if we can kick it up a notch. So when they have that competition again, you can get a good prize. Well, why not? I mean, naturally, if we enter, we want to see if we get a prize. Thanks for being such a great student and playing for us.
Thank you.
All right, see you later.
Bye, Sophia. Thank you. All right. Great. Wow. That was such a fruitful classes.
Thank you, Brian.
And not only did our teachers, our audience learn about repertoire selection, but also how I was very impressed by how you organized the 30-minute to fit in so much information in such a short time. So
yeah, and it might be a little too much, but anyway, I only have 30 minutes, so I wanted to get a lot done. Yeah, it might be a little too much, but yeah.
Your years of experience definitely came through those lessons. So yes, so for our audience, if you want to support us, and if you want to learn more about Scott, you can go to his website, right, at it's just his full name.com. So Scott McBride Smith.com. And if you want to see more piano content, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also help us make more piano content by clicking on the PayPal link in the description down below. So with that, we finished today's episode. Thank you everyone for watching. Stay safe, happy practicing, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.